In the distance, Tian Yunzi struggled to rise, spitting out a mouthful of fresh blood. The calmness in his eyes shattered, and with his left hand, he tore fiercely at his forehead, immediately ripping off the second seal. At that instant, Tian Yunzi's roar shook the heavens and earth, releasing an aura far stronger than before, several times more powerful than previously. The strength of this aura was so intense that even the ancient battleground manifesting in the world seemed on the verge of collapse. Wang Lin, come out, old man. Tian Yunzi howled to the sky. His appearance had undergone a drastic change as the second seal was torn away. He went from appearing to be a middle-aged man in his 50s to a robust man in his 30s. His hair had turned completely black, and a tremendous aura surged from him without restraint. Having torn off the second seal and unleashed the power of the second heavenly decay, this was Tian Yunzi's limit. The third heavenly decay was something he dared not activate lightly. Wang Lin, this weak cultivator, had time and again unleashed divine abilities that astonished him. The primordial law had already been incredibly powerful. Tian Yunzi had thought that this was Wang Lin's ultimate power, but he never expected that in his desperate struggle, Wang Lin still possessed such divine abilities. Wang Lin, come out! Tian Yunzi bellowed. But as his voice fell, a buzzing sound echoed across the heavens and earth. I am right before you. The voice was far more intense than thunder, shaking the very air, replacing all sounds of the battlefield, and reverberating in the ears of everyone present. Some cultivators with insufficient cultivation even had blood pour from their ears, crying out in pain. Even Tian Yunzi was taken aback. He raised his head, only to turn pale and gasp. In front of him, a towering figure far surpassing that of an 8-star ancient god appeared before Tian Yunzi and the others. The figure's height was beyond description. Tian Yunzi could barely see its face and could only make out the figure's waist at the farthest end of the boundless horizon. As Tian Yunzi looked up, a strange howling sound echoed in his ears, as though something had descended from the endless sky, causing friction due to its immense speed. In an instant, a wild wind rushed down from the sky, so powerful that it immediately caused the earth to collapse and shatter in all directions. Even the cultivators from the Cultivation Alliance were blown apart by this fierce wind. Even the immortals were visibly panicked, especially the immortal lord of the Cultivation Alliance, second only to Xun'er. Upon seeing the enormous figure, his body trembled, and his eyes were filled with indescribable horror. Despite his cultivation and composure, he broke into a cold sweat, his body shaking. His pupils contracted as if trying to say something. But then, he suddenly broke into wild laughter, though the laughter sounded crazed, as if he had experienced some unimaginable shock that drove him mad. Spitting out a mouthful of blood, this once immortal lord kept retreating, gradually disappearing into the vastness of the world. The sudden scene stunned everyone around them. However, before they could think further, the wind from the sky intensified, and some people looked up to see a dark spot forming at the end of the sky. The black dot grew larger, and in the blink of an eye, as the wind grew stronger, it revealed an unimaginable gigantic fist. This fist was like a vast land, casting a shadow that replaced the sky as it came crashing down. Tian Yunzi's expression became extremely grim. His aura reached its peak, and with a swing of his trident, he hurled it upwards. At the same time, he made hand seals, causing his robes to billow as if an invisible energy was circulating within them. He unleashed all the cultivation of the second heavenly decay, and his entire form transformed into a long rainbow, shooting toward the sky. The massive fist fell wildly, creating explosive sonic booms, and it collided with the trident in midair. With a deafening roar, the trident creaked as it neared its breaking point, only to be grabbed by the fist and held in its grip, continuing its descent until it clashed with the long rainbow that was Tian Yunzi. Boom, boom, boom. The violent sounds and the incredible impact swept across the battlefield, tearing apart everything in its path like a storm. The entire ancient battleground was immediately ripped asunder, dissipating into nothingness under the shockwave. The heavens and earth restored their order, and the stars in the sky beyond the land of demonic spirits no longer spun. The planets returned to their original positions. Even the land of demonic spirits itself remained unchanged. The only difference was the presence of a madman and the absence of many cultivators from the Alliance, leaving behind nothing but endless shock. A series of thumping sounds came from Tian Yunzi's body as he fell from the sky, crashing to the ground. A mouthful of blood spurted out, mixed with countless fragments of internal organs. Behind him stood the ancient demon Tagia. "Thank you." Tian Yunzi's voice was hoarse, and he spat out another mouthful of blood. Tajia's face was also pale. Just moments ago, he and Tian Yunzi had resisted together, barely managing to survive under that unbelievable divine power. In front of Tian Yunzi, Wang Lin's body descended from the sky. As he hit the ground, he flipped over, spitting blood. His right eye still contained a faint green glow, but it shattered in an instant, along with his azure light shield. The shield was completely destroyed. In Wang Lin's hand, however, there was an object. It was Tian Yunzi's trident. At this moment, Wang Lin was utterly drained of all fighting power. Even standing, his legs were trembling uncontrollably. Had it not been for the unwavering determination accumulated over 1,000 years, he would have already collapsed. Mu Bingmei stared blankly at the scene. The earlier events still left her in shock, even now. The Kungsu elder, too, looked at Wang Lin with a gaze full of awe and reverence. The words Mu Bingmei had spoken before echoed in his ears. He is no ordinary cultivator. Around them, the Alliance cultivators also looked at Wang Lin with fear and astonishment. The scene they had just witnessed was one they would never forget for the rest of their lives. The real ancient battleground, the tragic scenes, and that colossal figure left indelible marks on their minds. Even though Wang Lin had no fighting strength left, none of them dared to take a step forward. At this moment, their hearts were still racing from the earlier events, unable to calm down. Wang Lin's figure, in their eyes, seemed to overlap with that enormous figure. Just by standing there, an invisible aura of authority radiated from him. The Kungsu elder gazed at Wang Lin, his heart secretly sighing. The sight before him reminded him of the white tiger from the Four Saints sect, who had once single-handedly held off the Alliance and Kungsu's powerful cultivators, standing unyielding, even after death, making their enemies hesitate for a long time before daring to approach. Wang Lin had truly become famous in the land of demonic spirits, entering the ranks of powerful cultivators in the Alliance star domain. Though his cultivation wasn't the highest, no one dared to offend him easily. "Wang Lin, you must die." Tian Yunzi glared at Wang Lin and raised his right hand. But before he could unleash his divine power, the sky above suddenly shifted again. A figure emerged from the starry sky. This man was middle-aged, possessing a primordial spirit body, but exuding an aura of great authority. Behind him followed dozens of people, including those from the Azure Dragon Sacred Sect, Black Tortoise Sacred Sect, and White Tiger Sacred Sect. Behind these few dozen figures were countless members of the Four Saints sect. Their arrival made the heavens and earth tremble as though struck by thunder, causing everyone on the ground to look up. "Who dares to kill my future sacred emperor in front of me?" The middle-aged man was none other than the Vermilion Bird Sacred Emperor. His voice was calm, but the moment he spoke, the entire land of demonic spirits quaked. Many of the people on the ground staggered backward, as though unable to bear the weight of his words. "My old friends have arrived." The middle-aged man swept his gaze over the scene. Vermilion Bird Sacred Emperor. Tian Yunzi's face darkened. Compared to the Vermilion Bird Sacred Emperor, Tian Yunzi was considered a junior. Within the Alliance star domain, there were few who could match the Vermilion Bird Sacred Emperor in terms of seniority. With a single step, the middle-aged man appeared before Wang Lin. He carefully examined Wang Lin, and gradually, a smile of approval spread across his face as he nodded and said, "Good, good." Though it was only 2 words, they conveyed his satisfaction with Wang Lin. In truth, he had arrived long ago, but had refrained from appearing to use this opportunity to test Wang Lin. It was clear that Wang Lin had exceeded his expectations. Now, this conflict should come to an end. The Vermilion Bird Sacred Emperor's gaze flickered, and a sharp light appeared. He raised his right hand, and a white stone materialized in his palm. As soon as the stone appeared, a wave of scorching heat emanated from it, distorting the surrounding void, as if this object did not belong to this realm and was being rejected. The stone melted instantly, transforming into a drop of burning blood that hovered above the middle-aged man's hand. Everyone who laid eyes on the burning blood felt as if they had swallowed a flame, the heat searing into their souls. The vermilion bird sect's primordial sacred artifact. The Kungsu elder stared at the object in the vermilion bird's sacred emperor's hand and spoke in a low voice. Ultimately, the flames that did not exist in the world gathered in the southern sky, transforming into the shape of a vermilion bird. Its call echoed, carrying a trace of nobility, as it gazed down upon the beings below. At the same time, several elders from the Azure Dragon sacred sect, standing beside the middle-aged man, exchanged glances. The one currently in the front, wearing robes embroidered with 9 azure dragons, took a deep breath. He formed a hand seal and placed his hands on his chest, letting out a low growl. Immediately, an enormous aura erupted from his body. At the same time, pain appeared on his face, and his robe over his chest seemed to melt away, revealing his skin. A green light flickered across his skin, and from within his body, something floated out. It was a piece of greenwood. As the greenwood appeared, a series of dragon roars suddenly echoed through the sky. In the vast expanse of stars, countless azure dragons, each thousands of feet long, materialized. These azure dragons spread across the heavens, their roars shaking the world. They stirred powerful waves that spread out, as if disturbing the mortal world with a violent wind. Finally, in the eastern sky, these azure dragons converged into one gigantic azure dragon. Coiling its body, its merciless eyes swept over the crowd, fixing their gaze on everyone. Similarly, among the 4 sacred sects, 7 elders from the White Tiger sacred sect sat cross-legged. The positions they assumed seemed to form a formation. As they formed hand seals, golden lights suddenly flashed from their spiritual centers, and 7 fragments of gold flew out from their bodies. Upon the appearance of the 7 golden fragments, they quickly fused into a single irregular gold lump. As soon as this lump appeared, an anomaly in the sky followed. A thunderous tiger roar erupted, shaking the heavens and the earth. An overwhelming killing intent instantly spread, and among the surrounding cultivators, those with insufficient composure nearly had their spirits shattered by the terrifying roar. With the roar came a colossal white tiger. The white tiger appeared fierce, as if it could devour all living beings. It floated in midair, its blood-red eyes scanning the crowd. With a swift movement, it vanished into the western sky. The final sacred sect to take action was the Black Tortoise sacred sect. This sect had been torn apart after the betrayal of the sacred emperor, and with the subsequent assault from the Cultivation Alliance, only a few remained. Although they had since multiplied, their numbers were still few. The ones who came this time were only 3 elders. The elder in the lead closed his eyes, and instantly, a wave of water surrounded him. In the blink of an eye, this water surged to the heavens, sweeping across the sky, and a massive black tortoise slowly materialized. The black tortoise appeared somewhat dim. Upon its appearance, it let out a long, mournful cry, causing the water beneath it to spread rapidly, propelling the black tortoise toward the northern skies. However, compared to the other 3 sacred beasts, this black tortoise lacked the same formidable presence. The 4 sacred beasts had taken their places, the azure dragon in the east, the white tiger in the west, the vermilion bird in the south, and the black tortoise in the north. While this may seem like a lengthy event, in truth, it all happened in the span of an incredibly short time, with the 4 sacred beasts manifesting and surrounding the world. Tian Yunzi's expression darkened. Beside him, the ancient demon Taijia also fixed his gaze on the 4 sacred beasts in the sky, his eyes flashing with cold light. The vermilion bird's sacred emperor had come prepared. With a wave of his right hand, blood instantly flew out from his palm, heading straight for the vermilion bird in the south, merging with it. The vermilion bird immediately let out a long cry. The flames around its body grew even fiercer, heading straight for Tian Yunzi and the ancient demon Taijia. At the same time, the azure dragon, white tiger, and black tortoise sacred sects acted in unison. The 3 sacred beasts roared and charged toward the ground. In an instant, the sky and earth shifted colors, and an unimaginable force of impact rippled outward. Tian Yunzi's face grew darker as he formed a hand seal and pointed forward, muttering in a low voice, "Seven-colored tiger spirit of heavenly fortune." As he spoke, seven-colored light flashed before him, and a seven-colored tiger materialized, its size comparable to the white tiger. After appearing, it roared and rushed toward the white tiger. Seven-colored dragon spirit of heavenly fortune. Seven-colored black tortoise spirit of heavenly fortune. With Tian Yunzi's command, a seven-colored dragon and a seven-colored black tortoise appeared, both roaring and charging forward. At the same time, Tian Yunzi himself was rising into the air, his hands forming seals as he ascended. The ancient demon Tagia stared at the four sacred beasts, a trace of fear flickering in his eyes. The appearance of these sacred artifacts seemed strangely familiar to him, almost as if they had appeared in his memories, though not from Wang Lin's memories, but from his own, the memories of an ancient demon. Raising his right hand, he pointed toward the sky, chanting in a low voice, "Sun, moon, stars, triple burial art." As soon as he spoke, starry light appeared in the sky, quickly converging upon the four sacred beasts. Following the stars, moonlight descended from the heavens, parting the chaos of the world and directly landing. The moonlight was formless, with no origin, as if it had materialized from thin air. After the moonlight, it was the first and most powerful move of the three burials art, the solar burial. In the starry sky outside the land of demonic spirits, in the boundless void, at the moment when the solar burial divine art was unleashed by the ancient demon Tagia, countless beams of light immediately began to flicker from the void, converging at a single point. As more and more light spread, the point of convergence grew larger and larger, and the blinding radiance engulfed the entire starry sky, illuminating everything around it. As the light absorbed more beams, it continued to expand, reaching a size of several thousand feet in just an instant. Its intensity was so overwhelming that if a mortal were to see it, their eyes would immediately burst open. Even cultivators with insufficient strength would feel their eyes sting and be pierced through. At this moment, the light sphere, now thousands of feet in size, resembled a second sun. With a deafening roar, it shot straight toward the land of demonic spirits, its path lined with scorching fury. Tian Yunzi, with a wave of his sleeves, rushed toward the four saints. The Vermilion Bird Sacred Sect shook its head and said flatly, "Watch closely. My Vermilion Bird Sacred Sect's ancient sacred artifact only has 3 sealing moves, but these 3 are enough to ensure the eternal existence of our Four Saints sect." The words were aimed at Wang Lin, who, though exhausted to the limit, gritted his teeth and looked up. East, Azure Dragon Armor of Jia and Yi Wood. West, White Tiger of Gung and Xian Metal. South, Vermilion Bird of Bing and Ding Fire. North, Black Tortoise of Run and Kuei Water. My Vermilion Bird Sect's 3-element spiritual seal technique is the Bing Ding Fire. With his right hand forming a seal, the Vermilion Bird Sacred Emperor waved it forward and calmly spoke, "Bing Ling." At the same time, the other 3 sacred sects echoed the words, "Jia Ling, Gung Ling, Ren Ling." As these words were spoken, the 4 saints roared in unison, and at that moment, they transformed into 4 divine artifacts. The Azure Dragon became a long green spear, the White Tiger a golden sword, the Vermilion Bird a crimson longsword, and the Black Tortoise a massive black axe. The 4 divine artifacts, now formed, charged straight downward. The 7 colored spirits of Tian Yunzi were immediately pierced by the long spear, and the dragon spirit was shattered without resistance. The other 2 spirits met the same fate, unable to stop the transformation of the 4 saints' first sealing move. They dissolved into a sweeping storm that dispersed in all directions. The starlight of the ancient demon Tagia's tower, now spreading upward, shattered with a series of booming sounds as the 4 divine artifacts pierced through, disintegrating everything in their path. Even the moonlight, though briefly resisting, was instantly obliterated with a loud crash. The 4 saints' divine artifacts, howling in the air, rushed toward the ancient demon Tagia and Tian Yunzi. Just then, a blinding light erupted in the sky. It was the massive light point formed by the solar burial technique, rapidly approaching. The light point, in the blink of an eye, collided with the world of the land of demonic spirits, enveloping the entire region in radiant brilliance. The solar burial light, one of Wang Lin's most powerful divine arts, had been weakened by the ancient demon Tajia's method of possession, but it still displayed significant power. As the light spread, the four saints' divine artifacts collided with it in a fierce clash. The sounds of explosions erupted, and just then, the vermilion bird's sacred emperor's eyes glinted coldly. With a wave of his hand, he pointed forward and lowly shouted, "With the will of the vermilion bird's sacred emperor, unite the ancient sacred artifact, Ding Earth." At the same time, the other three sacred sect controllers called out in unison, "E-Earth, Xun'er Earth, Kuei Earth." As the voices echoed, the four divine artifacts' lights flashed and merged, all condensing into the crimson longsword of the vermilion bird's sacred artifact. Instantly, the longsword grew at a rapid pace, as if the heavens and earth were being torn asunder. Behind it, the shadowy figures of the azure dragon, white tiger, and black tortoise divine artifacts emerged. The red longsword descended and crushed downward. As it pressed just a few feet, the land of demonic spirits trembled with a deafening roar, and the ground sank deeply, forming a basin-like depression. The ancient demon Tajia's eyes flashed with red light, but fear was evident in his gaze. This scene caused the cultivators of the Alliance to gasp in shock, their eyes wide with terror. Some had heard of the power of the four saints' ancient sacred artifacts, knowing their destructive force could shatter the heavens. Even the Kungsu realm held them in high regard. Now, witnessing this firsthand, they were left speechless, their minds shaking. The once forgotten four saints' sect resurfaced in their minds, a lingering fear that would not fade. Mu Bingmei frowned as she gazed at the four saints, but after a quick glance at Wang Lin, her expression became complex, and she turned her attention away from the artifacts. The elder from the Kungsu realm, watching the sky, displayed a hint of apprehension in his eyes. He knew full well that the four saints' divine artifacts were not perfect and had flaws. The flaw lay in the black tortoise sacred artifact. The true black tortoise sacred artifact should be in the hands of the Cultivation Alliance, in the hands of the former black tortoise sacred emperor. The Kungsu elder's gaze flickered, but as the crimson longsword descended, the demonic shadow let out a muffled groan. Its entire body was suddenly forced down, and as the sword slashed down, the demonic shadow raised its arms to resist. However, with a resounding boom, the demonic shadow's arms shattered instantly, unable to stop the descent of the sword. Tajia, the ancient demon, showed fear in his eyes. While others might not know the origins of the four sacred artifacts, he had been observing carefully, and his initial guesses had now become certain. This is the primordial heavenly treasure. Tajia gasped, and at that moment, the demonic shadow above him, despite the thunderous sounds, could not block the sword. As the sword howled towards him, it cleaved through the demonic shadow, heading straight for Tajia. Just then, Tian Yunzi, standing nearby, showed a decisive gleam in his eyes. With a wave of his sleeve, his entire body became surrounded by a rainbow of 7 colors. He took a deep breath, pointed ahead, and whispered, "7 heavenly fortunes, by the will of heaven. Red." Upon speaking, Tian Yunzi's body trembled slightly, and the 7-colored light that surrounded him split. A red radiance separated and flew toward the crimson longsword above Tajia. Orange. From the remaining 6 colors around him, the orange radiance split out. In the blink of an eye, with each low chant, the 7-colored light, red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple, extracted one by one, flying forward and converging into a 7-colored rainbow. 7 radiances converge, forming the heavenly fortune divination. Tian Yunzi's black hair swirled, without wind as he roared. The 7-colored light immediately spun, turning into a vortex. Inside the vortex, 3 wooden armors slowly emerged, which Tian Yunzi grabbed in his hands. With a throw, the 3 wooden armors collided in the air and fell to the ground, forming a divination pattern. Tian Yunzi stared intently at the pattern, his eyes wide open. With a hand seal, he pointed at the wooden armors. Borrowing fortune, completing the Tao. As soon as these words were spoken, an indescribable aura emanated from the three wooden armors. As the aura appeared, even the crimson longsword faltered. It was as though a power was about to awaken from the wooden armors, surging outward. In that instant, everyone around was stunned. The Kungsu elder's gaze narrowed as he looked at Tian Yunzi, his eyes filled with a strange light. Tian Yunzi's Tao? It's not the will of heaven, but rather borrowing heaven's fortune to move, creating his own sea of Tao. This person cultivates with such an intent, and has even reached such a profound realm. He has already glimpsed the Tao. Even Taijia, the ancient demon, seemed to have noticed something. He gasped in shock and turned his gaze to Tian Yunzi. Wang Lin stared fixedly at the aura emanating from the three wooden armors. He recognized it clearly. The aura was deeply familiar to him. In his storage pouch, he still had crystals from the 8-star ancient god's skull, taken from the tomb of Immortal's deep abyss. The aura emitted from those crystals was nearly identical to that of the three wooden armors. As the aura from the wooden armors intensified, the vermilion bird's sacred emperor's eyes sharpened. Without hesitation, he pointed forward with his right hand, activating the third level of the vermilion bird's sacred artifact, and uttered a low command. Fire heaven. The crimson longsword let out a sharp cry. Flames suddenly erupted from it, spreading rapidly across the sky. It was as if the very fire of the heavens and earth was its origin. The flames spread through the sky, blending into the starry expanse. In an instant, nearly half of the star domain was engulfed in thick flames. Inside the sword, an aura identical to that of the wooden armors also surged, but it was even stronger. With the vermilion bird's sacred emperor's finger pointed downward, the long sword swung down, colliding directly with the three wooden armors. Boom, boom, boom. With a deafening roar, the heavens and earth trembled as a frenzied shockwave swept through. The three wooden armors shattered instantly, and even the surrounding seven-colored vortex was torn apart like a whirlwind. Tian Yunzi spat out a mouthful of blood, his body violently retreating. The longsword descended, breaking through all obstacles, and landed directly on Taijia's forehead. At that moment, Taijia roared, and black mist quickly gathered at his brow. His true spirit emerged, rushing forward with a defiant will, heading straight for the sword. He was an ancient demon, one of the three ancient clans, a race that defied heaven. Now, under the sword's pressure, his enraged roar spread throughout the heavens and earth. But at the moment his true spirit emerged, a flash of red light from the sword sent blood-like energy flying out. The red light struck Taijia's true spirit at his brow. This blood is not from the primordial heavenly Tao. Taijia's true spirit cried out in agony, and his forehead seemed to melt as the blood pierced through. His true spirit retreated back into Qing Lin's body, but the blood followed, landing on his brow, sealing it with a fresh red mark. The ancient demon Taijia's body trembled and immediately collapsed to the ground. The vermilion bird's sacred emperor's form became increasingly blurry. As he was originally a primordial spirit, using the primordial sacred artifact drained him immensely. If he had opened only the first or second layer, it would have been manageable, but with the third layer activated, only he within the Four Saints sect could achieve such a feat. However, the cost was unimaginable, even for him. His body grew even more translucent, but with a flick of his right hand, the crimson longsword flashed into the air, shooting towards Tian Yunzi, who was retreating. In the blink of an eye, the longsword closed in, swinging downward to strike Tian Yunzi's head. Following the sword's strike, the azure dragon spear, white tiger blade, and black tortoise halberd appeared, all descending together. Clearly, the vermilion bird's sacred emperor harbored a murderous intent. Tian Yunzi's expression twisted with rage. He suddenly looked up, and in this critical moment, his right hand tore at his forehead, ripping open his third seal halfway. Just by tearing it halfway, an indescribable force surged up tenfold, clashing against the assault of the four sacred artifacts of the Four Saints sect. Booms echoed through the air, and an explosion of force spread, causing Tian Yunzi to spit blood once again. His body surged forward, tearing through the sky and disappearing from sight in an instant. The crimson longsword hung motionless in the air. The vermilion bird's sacred emperor stood in silence, his form growing even more transparent. He watched Tian Yunzi fleeing and shook his head, saying, "I'm old. If I were at my peak, Tian Yunzi wouldn't have escaped even the second layer of the 4 sacred artifacts." With a sigh, he glanced around at the others present. Finally, his gaze fell upon the Kungsu elder, and he spoke slowly. "Old friend, are you going to oppose the 4 Saints sect once more today?" The Kungsu elder remained silent for a moment, looking down at the ancient demon Tagia sealed on the ground, then glancing at the primordial sacred artifact still hovering in the air. With his cultivation level, the only thing to fear at this moment was that primordial sacred artifact. "I came here to repay a favor to Wang Lin. Now that the ancient demon is sealed by the primordial sacred artifact, the matter is settled. I take my leave." After some contemplation, the elder gave up on intervening. He deeply feared the 4 sacred artifacts. The current power of the sacred artifacts was far stronger than in the past, but if the 4 Saints sect were cornered with the blood sacrifice artifact, the elder sighed quietly and then vanished into the sky. As he flew, he glanced back at Mu Bingmei. Mu Bingmei remained silent for a moment, staring at Wang Lin's retreating figure. She bit her lip and softly said, "Let me see him, just once, please." The vermilion bird's sacred emperor paused for a moment, his eyes sweeping over Wang Lin, but he didn't speak. Wang Lin's face was ashen. His injuries had already surpassed the limit of what he could endure, and his primordial spirit was on the brink of collapse. The pain spread throughout him, and his suffering showed in his eyes. Wang Lin did not turn around, nor did he respond to Mu Bingmei's words. Instead, he spoke to the vermilion bird's sacred emperor. "Are you taking me back to the vermilion bird's sacred sect?" The vermilion bird's sacred emperor nodded. "Take my friends who have been injured because of me as well. Let them recover. I will agree to all the conditions of your vermilion bird's sacred sect." The vermilion bird's sacred emperor smiled slightly and nodded. "It's a deal." As he spoke, the members of the 4 Saints sect immediately dispersed to assist the wounded. Meanwhile, the cultivators of the Cultivation Alliance retreated, their eyes filled with apprehension. "My friends have lost their physical bodies. The 4 Saints sect will help them reconstitute. My elder brother Situ was poisoned by the corpse insect's deadly toxin. I will take responsibility for that. My benefactor Zhou needs Wang Lin resurrected. As for Wang Lin's physical body, I will give it to you. If you need help from the 4 Saints sect, we will give our full support. There is a direct disciple of mine in the land of demonic spirits. I will have someone take them to the Vermilion Bird Sacred Sect. These immortals of the Cultivation Alliance tried to kill me before. I want their immortal primordial spirits." Wang Lin's eyes gleamed with coldness. He would never show mercy to these people. To him, they were like demons. The immortals around him had no hesitation. They immediately fled in all directions like scattered birds. The Vermilion Bird's Sacred Emperor's eyes glinted coldly as he nodded. "This is easily done." With a wave of his large sleeve, the primordial sacred artifact hovering in the air trembled and split into 4, sweeping across the surroundings. Screams echoed, and the air was filled with the sound of devastation. Mu Bingmei, who had been biting her lip, was now bleeding. Pain flashed in her eyes as she cried out, "Wang Lin, I just want to see him. Please, let me see him just once." Wang Lin could not see the pain in her eyes, but he knew his own suffering was a burden that would never dissipate in this life. He closed his eyes and calmly said, "I owe this woman a life-saving pill, and once a life-saving favor." The Vermilion Bird's Sacred Emperor smiled. "I will find a way to repay you, and make sure Kungsu Realm is satisfied. Is there anything else?" Wang Lin fell silent, shaking his head. He softly said, "Let's go." The Vermilion Sacred Emperor waved his large sleeve, and immediately, Wang Lin's body floated up. Under the Emperor's primordial energy, he sped towards the gap leading to the land of demonic spirits. "Wang Lin, he is my child. I must see him." Mu Bingmei's face turned pale, her body trembling. She stared at Wang Lin, clenching her hands tightly. "You are unworthy." Wang Lin spun around abruptly and shouted. He had been suppressing his emotions for so long, but now, he could no longer hold back. His roar unleashed hundreds of years of inner suffering, his voice erupting in madness. In that moment, His severe injuries worsened, and with his heart trembling, a mouthful of blood sprayed out. Darkness clouded his vision. The Four Saints sect had left, taking everyone with them. Tears streamed from the corners of Mu Bingmei's eyes. Agony surged from her heart, and she spat out a mouthful of blood, collapsing to the ground. The Kungsu elder sighed deeply, waved his hand, and took Mu Bingmei away, vanishing into the distance. In the void, only his weary voice echoed. Fateful entanglement. The Cultivation Alliance had suffered a devastating blow. Voidmaster was dead. The former Immortal Lord had gone mad and disappeared, and a vast number of Immortals had been lost. By the time the remaining members of the Alliance returned to their headquarters, they were few in number. This series of events spread like snowflakes, and within 2 months, almost everyone in the Alliance Star domain had heard about it. Some couldn't believe it, others were shocked, and many were filled with different thoughts, suspicion, fear, and intrigue. The predominant sentiment, however, was disbelief. How could the mighty Cultivation Alliance suffer such a crushing blow? But as time passed, and rumors grew, people were slowly forced to accept the truth of the matter. Even more shocking was the return of the Four Saints sect. According to rumors, the Vermilion Sacred Emperor had descended, wielding the 4 ancient sacred artifacts, severely injuring the Alliance Elder Council member Tian Yunzi, and sealing the awakened Immortal Emperor. This news was earth-shattering, leaving all cultivators stunned, unable to believe it, yet terrified deep inside. The presence of the Four Saints sect slowly began to resurface in the hearts of the people in the Alliance Star domain as rumors continued to spread. The former overlords seemed like a ferocious beast that had been asleep for millions of years, now awakening once more. Meanwhile, Luo Tian cultivators, rarely, ceased all offensive actions, as if contemplating the truth of these rumors. Outside the Alliance Star domain's headquarters, almost every cultivator waited in silence, anticipating the Cultivation Alliance's retaliation. Since the establishment of the Cultivation Alliance, anyone who provoked them was destined to be annihilated, facing the Alliance's wrath and vengeance. Yet, while nearly everyone awaited the Alliance's response, the Cultivation Alliance remained silent, making no move. Months passed, and after 3 more months, more and more cultivators began to sense something was wrong. The rare silence of the Cultivation Alliance could only mean 2 things. Either it was preparing for an earth-shattering eruption, or perhaps the headquarters had suffered an unimaginable blow. At this moment, the immense formation around the Cultivation Alliance headquarters activated, cutting off all internal and external communication. This immediately caused a massive uproar. Luo Tian's forces were the first to strike. Countless Luo Tian cultivators unleashed a frantic assault on everything in the Alliance Star domain, their power surging like an unstoppable tide. A month into Luo Tian's full-scale attack, the mysterious and elusive corpse insect in the Alliance Star domain declared it would not participate in the battle between the Cultivation Alliance and Luo Tian. Instead, it seized control of the Southern Star domain, cutting off all entry to outsiders, especially non-members of the Corpsine sect. Anyone who attempted to enter would face a devastating counterattack. The Corpsine sect's sudden independence caused a massive upheaval in the Alliance Star domain, leaving everyone stunned. However, the Cultivation Alliance headquarters remained silent. Without any orders from the headquarters, all forces in the Alliance were forced to rally together to face Luo Tian's relentless assault. But, even with all forces combined, true resistance seemed impossible. As Luo Tian cultivators continued to flood in, the Alliance forces were pushed back, eventually losing the entire northern region of the Alliance Star domain after a year of brutal fighting. Luo Tian's forces successfully took over the western and northern parts of the Alliance Star domain, connecting them as one. Time passed, and nearly 2 years had passed since the rumors of the Immortal Emperor's cave appeared. In these 2 years, no news had come from the Cultivation Alliance headquarters, and the massive formation around it prevented anyone from entering. From a distance, the headquarters was no longer the bustling center it once was. It had become a dead zone, with rumors spreading that the headquarters had been uprooted and no survivors remained inside. These rumors had been circulating for 2 years without cease. Over time, The people of the former Alliance star domain gradually shifted from hopeful anticipation to disappointment, and finally, to utter despair. In that despair, they formed their own factions, large and small, fragmenting the starry skies as countless new sects sprouted like bamboo shoots after the rain. Some of these forces seized control of 3 to 5 cultivation stars, consolidating all cultivators into a single power. Others occupied more than a dozen stars, forming sects of their own. There were even those that had once been 7th-level cultivation nations. Without the oversight of the Cultivation Alliance, they became independent entities like the Corpsine sect. Among these forces, 4 rose to dominance. 2 of them stood above the rest, Cloudrise Nation and Reed Flute Nation, the only remaining 8th-level cultivation nations within the Alliance star domain. Their power had been almost entirely preserved, and a year and a half after the Cultivation Alliance vanished, they formally declared independence. The other 2 factions evolved from the former backbone of the Cultivation Alliance. Through mutual assimilation and consolidation, they gave rise to 2 new powers, the Celestial Hall and the Earthly Evil Sect. Outside these 4 main forces were scattered smaller factions, remnants of the Cultivation Alliance, all concentrated in the central region of the Alliance star domain. Although Luo Tian had seized the western and northern regions, they were far from satisfied. 3 options lay before them: the Southern Corpsine sect, the central remnants and headquarters of the Alliance, and the mysterious Eastern region. Luo Tian preferred to avoid direct conflict with the Corpsine sect unless absolutely necessary. As for the East, their analysis concluded that it had likely fallen under the control of the Four Saints sect over the past 2 years, though no concrete proof existed. Yet it was the Four Saints sect that Luo Tian feared most, even more than the Corpsine sect. Thus, the Alliance's central remnants and its headquarters became their prime target. Just as the Luo Tian cultivator army prepared for a full assault, something unexpected happened. The great formation outside the Alliance headquarters, dormant for nearly 2 years, suddenly roared to life and slowly began to open. This opening unleashed a storm across the Alliance star domain. Luo Tian's advance came to an immediate halt. Even the Corpsine sect turned to observe cautiously. As for the former Alliance cultivators who had founded new sects, all eyes turned toward the headquarters. Yet the headquarters did not attempt to forcibly reintegrate these new sections. Instead, it issued a kill order. Kill Wang Lin. This man once operated in the Luo Tian star domain under the alias Su Mu, known by the Dao title Demon Path Scion, and recognized as a true Thunder Immortal. He is now part of the Vermilion Bird Sacred Sect of the Four Saints sect. Whoever seizes his essence spirit shall receive the Immortal Realm legacy once held by the Cultivation Alliance. In addition to this kill order, the Alliance headquarters issued a command. All former Cultivation Alliance cultivators who have founded new sects, resist the Luo Tian forces for 60 years and protect the headquarters. Those who do so shall join the Luo Tian Elder Council and gain full access to the Immortal Realm legacy. Any who flee without a fight, when the Cultivation Alliance collapses, so shall your life soul shatter. At that same time, with the reopening of the headquarters, vast quantities of magical artifacts and immortal arts jade slips were released and claimed by the former Alliance cultivators. These treasures represented millennia of accumulation, and their sudden release signaled the peril brewing within the Alliance headquarters. After issuing those 2 commands and releasing the trove of magical resources, the Great Formation was once again activated, sealing the Alliance headquarters shut. Yet even that brief opening chilled the hearts of every former Alliance cultivator. Most of their life souls were not in their own hands. The more powerful one's cultivation, the more forcefully the Alliance had extracted their life soul. Resistance meant certain death. This was how the Cultivation Alliance had ruled the star domain for countless years. And then, right as the command was issued from the headquarters, the eastern region of the Alliance star domain saw the rise of the Four Saints sect. Just as Luo Tian had predicted, in 2 short years the Four Saints sect had completely seized the eastern region, sweeping away all opposition, save for the Kungsu realm. In this way, the Alliance star domain was shattered and fragmented, becoming a battlefield for multiple forces. Luo Tian held the dominant position on the surface, but the enigmatic nature of the Corpsine sect The growing prestige of the Four Saints sect, the magical artifacts and immortal arts inherited by the Alliance remnants, and the suffocating control of the life-soul contracts, all created a delicate balance among the competing powers. Yet the blood feud between Luo Tian's Yen Lazy and the Cultivation Alliance. The man wore a white robe, his appearance ordinary, yet an unusual aura surrounded him, giving him an ethereal and transcendent presence. With his eyes closed, as his chest rose and fell, two chi dragons emerged from his nostrils, swirling around him several times before slowly being drawn back into his mouth and nose. During this process, beneath him, large amounts of white flames surged from the stones below. As the chi dragons entered his body, the flames followed suit, absorbed into his being. He had been sitting cross-legged here for 2 years, never leaving this spot. During these 2 years, he had quietly meditated, focusing on his breath, absorbing the power of the flames from the stones to heal the injuries to his primordial spirit. Behind him stood an elderly man, extremely frail, as if he had lost most of his life force. Over these 2 years, the old man would occasionally raise his right hand and place his fingers on the youth's back. Each time his fingertips touched, the old man would tremble as if immense primordial energy surged from within his body and flowed into the youth before him. The youth also trembled, his white hair rising as if blown by an invisible wind. The heat within his body grew stronger. The Vermilion Bird's sacred sect's divine art, known as the 9 Mysteries transformation of the Vermilion Bird, is a technique that every holy emperor must learn. This divine art traces back to the ancient times and is one of the peak techniques in the world today.